How many modes of public transport are there in Britain? To the average person, this is an entirely hypothetical and entirely uninteresting question, to be debated vociferously by anoraks in pubs. But as an anorak, this is a question of immense importance, and because I don't much like pubs, I decided to make a YouTube video instead. However, in an attempt to touch some grass, I've decided to ride all the different modes in just 48 hours, and in an attempt not to appear like a complete loner, I've brought along a friend. He has no idea what route or transport our trip will entail, and generally does a great job of keeping the sinking feeling that he made a huge mistake in agreeing to all of this from showing in his eyes as the days go on. Our journey started on a beautiful June day in the sunny seaside city of Bournemouth. Our scheme to ride all of Britain's modes of public transport started on the dot of 10 a.m.
Hello, we are in beautiful Bournemouth. We are about to try every single method of public transport in Britain, and this man has no idea what's happening or where he is going. Are you ready for our first mode of transport?
Where am I?
Let's go. Okay, immediate update. The first mode of transport is the land train. I'll put a picture of it on the screen, and it's not running because of landslips. So we're going to take a bus to our real first mode of transport. We'll get back to you in a few moments' time.
And so, on the dot of somewhere around 10:04 a.m, we embarked on our backup plan to try and ride all but one of Britain's modes of public transport. Now, at this point in the video, I know that my fellow transport anoraks will be screaming at their screens, shouting, "But Ian, a land train isn't a mode of public transport, it's a silly children's seaside attraction." And to that I say, "Por qué no los dos?" In order to do this challenge comprehensively, I have devised 4 criteria which an aspiring mode of transport must adhere to be classified as public, and, more importantly, to be ridden on our odyssey of transit. Those 4 criteria are: 1. It must operate on fixed routes. So anything that goes door to door is out. That includes taxis, hire bikes, and everybody's favourite urban innovation, e-scooters. 2. It must have at least 2 designated stops. So anything that just does a loop and then takes you back to where you started is out. You must actually be able to use it to travel somewhere. That means we say goodbye to roller coasters, horse and carriage rides, at least all the ones I could find, and, tragically, duck tours. 3. It must be freely and individually accessible to members of the public without having to pay to enter a larger attraction of which the transport is part. So the monorails at Alton Towers and the Bewley Motor Museum, whilst a form of transport, don't count as you can't ride them without paying for the attractions in which they are contained. And finally, 4. It must clearly be a vehicle. This is mainly here to stop people saying, "Actually, you didn't ride an escalator on your trip, so it doesn't count." But nonetheless, it means escalators, lifts, and donkey rides are all discounted. Oh, and one more thing. Although they would definitely have fulfilled my criteria, we didn't ride aeroplanes or helicopters on this trip. In theory, because it would have been unnecessarily bad for the climate, but also strongly influenced by the fact that there's only one scheduled fixed route helicopter ride in Britain, and it's bloody expensive. Something that undoubtedly fulfills all the criteria above, however, is our first successful mode of public transport, which is right here. The Fisherman's Walk Cliff Lift in Southbourne, Dorset is one of a handful of funicular railways left in the UK. Many of them were built in the Victorian era, when Netflix hadn't been invented yet, and so going to the seaside and marvelling at the majesty of a counterweight system still qualified as entertainment. This one was one of the last to be built in the UK in 1935, when people really should have known better. Nonetheless, we're very happy that the cliff transportation organisers of yesteryear did choose to build this, because the other 2 funicular railways in this part of the world have been closed due to the same pesky landslips that derailed our land train.
Are you ready?
Yeah. Wow, this is actually really cool.
I know, I'm genuinely so excited. It goes up.
Oh.
Look at that. That view is going to get amazing.
Wow.
How did you find that?
Well, I didn't die.
So that was a success.
It was actually surprisingly a lot of fun.
It's
despite how
genuinely
short
really
it
good,
was.
yeah.
I enjoyed it.
You ready to go to your next mode of transport?
No, let's go home.
I'm vetoing that. Let's go.
Our second mode of transport required a brief walk up the high street to this building, where we were greeted by an unexpectedly excellent mural. This is Folkestone Forboscombe Station, and we're here to catch a train, specifically a Class 444 Desiro. You might have heard of trains before. The first public railway line was opened by George Stephenson between Stockton and Darlington in 1825, and since then they've become rather popular. They've come a long way since those early days though. Stephenson's rocket had a top speed of 30 miles an hour, but still managed to fatally run over one unlucky passenger on its maiden journey. Despite these subsequent improvements in railway safety, we are mindful of this lurking danger and conscientiously mind the gap between the train and platform edge as we embark. The train glided north at significantly more than 30 miles an hour, and a quick 17 minutes later we alighted, with my travelling companion still unsure of where I had taken him.
Yeah, where are we?
You'll have to find out. Find a sign.
We're in Gourmet Coffee Bar and Kitchen.
How did you know? Incredible.
I'm so confused. Where are we? Where are we? Brockenhurst. Lovely.
Yes, we had made it to Brockenhurst in the heart of the New Forest, undoubtedly Britain's weirdest national park. But whilst we would gladly have stayed to see the wild roaming horses, supercars and tourists that make this place what it is, our schedule was punishing and our next destination lay further south. Our onward rail connection, on a Class 450 for those keeping track, departed bang on time and afforded us an excellent view of our next mode of transport as it pulled into Lymington Pier. Ferries, like trains, are rather well known, although, according to my research, not nearly as historic. When I googled when the first ferry was, Google's AI overview told me it was established in November 1999, which sounded right, so I didn't bother to fact check it. This particular ferry, the White Sun, was built in 2009 and now plies the route between Lymington and Yarmouth every day, with its cargo of holidaymakers, commuters, and public transport enthusiasts who irritatingly insist on videoing the entire journey in tow. It's a beautiful journey, passing through Lymington Harbour, past Hurst Castle and out into the Solent, before eventually docking in Yarmouth on Britain's largest and most antiquated island, the Isle of Wight. Arriving here usually feels like stepping back in time. Indeed, it seemed to transport my travel companion back to the days of the Norman conquest.
So we have officially landed in French territory.
Absolutely. Oui, monsieur.
Bonjour.
However, we couldn't hang around to take in that foreign je ne sais quoi, because our next flawless multimodal transport connection was beckoning. Awaiting us was another big hitter on any public transport greatest hits CD, a bus. Buses have been around a little longer than trains. The first definitive bus service was established in Nantes in 1823, although those early examples were drawn by horses. Despite the Isle of Wight's rather old-fashioned and apparently French ambiance, technology has progressed enough on this fair isle for our bus to be powered by diesel. In an homage to that first bus though, this example has an open top, allowing us to experience nature being blasted into our faces at 40 miles an hour, which my hay-feverish companion was very pleased about. The bus wound its way along comically tiny roads to the furthest tip of the island, where we alighted at one of the country's corniest amusement parks with one of its nicest views. We, however, only had eyes for one thing, our next mode of transport. Unfortunately, in my friend's case, those eyes were white and tinged with terror as his fear of heights began to kick in.
This is right.
Chairlifts and more primitive versions thereof have been used by people living in mountainous regions for centuries. Nowadays, they are mostly at home in rather chillier climes at ski resorts, taking suited and booted holidaymakers to the tops of snowy mountains, so that they can fall back down those mountains again in a vaguely controlled manner, having paid large quantities of money for the pleasure of doing so. Skiing is not advised from the summit of the Isle of White Needles chairlift, however, as, quite apart from the less than ideal weather conditions, any would-be skiers would have a rather wet landing at the bottom of the slope. We made our way down to the charming beach, famous for its unusually coloured cliffs, whose sediment was once used in the glass-blowing industry at this site, and then made our way back up the cliff using the chairlift. For those of you who are currently screaming at your screens that a chairlift is not a vehicle and therefore does not qualify as public transport on my itinerary, I argue that you have no sense of fun and have lost the whimsical zest of youth. Besides, if you thought this was questionable, you should see some of the stuff that's coming up. Once back atop the cliff from which we had just descended, we hopped back on another bus. Sadly, this one had a roof, to take us to the Isle of Wight's county town, Newport. It's an understated place, this. Most of White's visitors come for its charming villages and dramatic coastlines, not this rather functional town bang splat in the centre of the island. I once spent a week's holiday in Newport and can confirm that, to co-opt a quote from Winston Churchill, it is a modest town with much to be modest about. Thankfully, our time in this bastion of mediocrity is limited to a brief few moments in its central bus station before our connection whisks us out of town towards the other side of the island. We alighted our bus 20 minutes later in the very agreeable seaside town of Ryde, which offered us great views across the Solent and an absolutely enormous macaroni cheese in an American restaurant. There was just enough time to watch some more transport in a bar before we turned in for the night and ended our first day.